So businesses have been left frustrated as the government has rejected pleas to loosen visa rules for drivers amid the train shortage. So again, if anyone who doesn't know, we are having around 100,000 lorry driver shortage, and the government have told companies hire British people, stop looking at bloody foreigners to come in to do the jobs that British people don't want to do. So that's great stuff. Garen, we're facing a huge shortage, and we'll have a look at the shortage list again, just to emphasize how stupid this whole thing is, right? But business groups have been left frustrated after the business secretary, I think that's Kwasi Kwarteng, rejected a request to loosen Brexit immigration rules to ease the supply chain crisis, telling companies to hire UK-based workers instead. And I wonder how many of these business groups and businesses actually fund the Tory party, regret maybe doing that, and maybe we'll look at funding someone else or not being involved in politics, because honestly, Boris Johnson has just screwed business royally through Brexit and the other things he's doing. Like, he's not even trying to help at this point. I suppose not even at this point, to start the year. Businesses across multiple sectors are struggling to meet customer demand as a consequence of labour shortages, particularly in haulage, where there's 100,000 driver shortfall. Something we keep mentioning pretty much every other day. The industry says this is a consequence of Brexit and the pandemic. EU drivers now require a visa to work in the UK. Also, they have to show they can make a minimum amount of money, amongst other things, and pay NHS surcharges, which, again, if you had to do that or work in another country where you didn't have to do most or any of that, wonder which country you're going to pick. But are not included on the government shortage occupation list and do not qualify for their definition of skilled workers. I mean, it's a massive kick in the teeth there for lorry drivers that they don't even qualify for the government's definition of skilled workers, despite the fact that they have to drive, the closest thing we'll have to a tank on the street. Like, if this thing hits your car, rest in peace, F for respects, that thing will go straight through your car at 30 miles per hour. Many returned home during the pandemic and have not returned. COVID also saw the suspension of driver testing, leaving a backlog of several thousand. So, you've got EU drivers leaving, driver tests being cancelled, and more people kind of leaving the industry, which is further creating problems. Nando's, McDonald's and KFC are among the companies that have reported shortages as a consequence of not having enough lorry drivers, while Tesco, Amazon, John Lewis are offering 4-figure joining on bonuses in about £1,000 to drivers. I mean, again, it's good for the drivers that there's a shortage in the sense of they're being paid more now, and their kind of working conditions will be looked at, and that's great. That's something that could have always have happened, but the system of governance we have, it took a crisis for industry to do something about it. But on the whole, we are facing a massive problem when it comes to the shortage of lorry drivers. Logistics UK and the British Retail Consortium wrote to Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng last week, urging the government to help ease the imminent challenges by granting temporary visas. In a response seen by Sky, Mr Kwarteng says HGV drivers are not sufficiently skilled to meet the visa requirements, and companies should focus on training more British staff. Imagine the government telling you you're not required to be on the skill shortage list, despite you being one of the key industries that has to drive around, again, a tank, which you need a special license for, and you're one of the key players that keeps the country going. Imagine the gall of this government. I just can't. The government recognised that the UK labour market shortage has changed dramatically due to the economic impacts and measures necessary to tackle the Rona, but I realise that by adding HGV drivers to the occupation list, this could provide a short-term temporary solution, he said. So, that's Kwasi Kwarteng saying we could provide a solution here. However, many UK-based workers now face an uncertain future and need help to find new employment opportunities. I'm sure you would agree on the importance of utilising our domestic workforce and how migration policies need to be considered. So what he's saying is, yes, I see there's a problem here, but would you not rather, train up and hire British drivers instead? Like, Kwasi, mate, I don't think you know this, but I think from what I've read, it takes around 9 months to become a lorry driver. It could be longer, it could be shorter, it could be, say, 6 months, it could be a year. But let's stick with 9 months here. even if these companies started doing massive recruitment drives earlier in the year, these drivers would still be nowhere ready. Not to mention the fact that there's a failure rate. So even if they did try and do, say 50,000 lorry driver tests, there'd still be a lot of them who fail and need further testing and further training. So this argument that, we could resolve the problem short term and use that time to actually train up lorry drivers, which isn't a bad idea if in theory it does work, which it won't do because a lot of these drivers won't come back here. But the simple fact is, he could put it on the shortage list and say, look, I've done what industry wanted, but we need to train British drivers because foreign drivers don't want to come here anymore. But I guess at that point you'd have to acknowledge the xenophobia and hatred that the government have stoked. So again, who knows why they haven't put it on the shortage list, but once we have a look at the list, you guys will get a bit of a kick out of that. Logistics UK said the government's position means driver shortages will continue well into 2022, and that's only if they can train enough drivers to do those roles. This might kick on until 2023, to be fair. Logistics UK is frustrated with the government's decision to reject the logistics industry's call for temporary visas for EU drivers as a short-term solution, said Alex Vitech, the General Manager of Public Policy. While these new domestic drivers are trained and qualify into the workforce, can take up to 9 months. The DVSA works through a backlog for outstanding drivers, which could take until early 2022. And if there is another lockdown, that's going to mean more driving tests being cancelled, which will further push back, further increase that backlog. The entire thing's a joke. Let's be real now. The industry needs drivers now, which is true. Not in, it will need it in 9 months, but it needs it now urgently, and the government are failing to do so, which is just crazy to me. The issue cuts into the heart of the Brexit debate. Supporters of leaving the European Union arguing that reducing EU workforce would lift wages and standards for domestic workers, which en masse it hasn't actually done, even in industries with shortage. Certain industries, these employers aren't really considering wage increases. It's crazy, I know, but certain industries aren't going to do it. They're looking at getting in prisoners to do certain work so they don't have to increase wages, and the government are allowing that to happen. Business counters that introducing new regime at the peak of a pandemic was unnecessary, has unnecessarily damaged their ability to meet customer demand, which, again, they don't offer any analysis here. It's just a 50-50. Well, on the one hand, Lexiteers and Brexiteers say that the wages will go up and British people can do the jobs that foreigners have done. And on the other side, you have businesses who are saying it's very unfair to implement a new system whilst we are in the middle of a pandemic. Simply the case, they could argue both that, look, we are trying to train up more lorry drivers. We have increased wages. We are looking at working conditions for lorry drivers. But at the same time, we need immediate lorry drivers now. We need them to be put on the emergency visa list so that we can get these drivers in now to fill the roles, the vacancies we have. And then in a year or two's time, we can look at, how many, do we still need lorry drivers to be on the shortage occupation list. That's how, it could be looked at, but we don't have the brains in government to, frame it like that, I guess. And if we go to this here, which is the shortage occupation list, right? Who's on it? Artists, all jobs. Dancers and choreographers, only skilled ballet dancers or skilled contemporary dancers who meet the standard required, blah, blah, blah. So you've got ballet dancers, you've got artists, you've got dancers, musicians, of orchestral musicians, etc., arts officers, producers and directors, graphic designers who are on the shortage list but not lorry drivers, despite the fact that there's a huge shortage of them and we desperately need them to keep the country going. But no, the government put choreographers and ballet dancers on the shortage list but not lorry drivers. Make it make sense, people. Make it make sense. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.